All right, you all, welcome to week two's portfolio project video. In this video, we'll talk about how to get some routing set up and get our data moved into state and play around some with setting state and adding in other little pieces of state. So, routing and state. The goal of this week is to add some kind of state into your portfolio project somewhere. It could be a little piece of state that handles whether something is shown or hidden. It could be a piece of state that's like a number that increments and decrements as you push a button. It could be whether or not something is collapsed or expanded, something like that. Just like a tiny piece of state, I would say not an array or objects, but something very simple to get your feet wet with state. And then next week, we'll talk about how to implement some more complex state into your portfolio project. So simple piece of state and some routing, meaning different pages in your app. In React, we don't have actual different HTML pages. We instead have sort of these fake pages, which are just different components that can be displayed depending on which page the user is on. So don't overthink this, just a couple different pages just to kind of practice making pages and hooking them up with routing. That's the plan. We're gonna keep working on my little games tracker thing to track your games. We're gonna keep working on that, and you can keep working on your portfolio project and implement these concepts. To start, we're going to work with state. State is a place to store data where if that data changes, the component will re-render, which is pretty essential to an app that's actually dynamic, that's actually working. State is the heart of React because that is what makes React react. It reacts to changes in that state, re-renders, updates the page based on that new state. So if you have a piece of state like, should the messages be expanded or should they be collapsed? Maybe a Boolean true false. When that Boolean changes to true, it will re-render. Now with them all expanded, and change it to false, it will re-render. Now with them all collapsed. Let's get into it. This right here is the syntax for creating state in React. There's a lot going on this one line, and we're not going to talk about the details of everything that's happening in the background here, but all that we need to understand is that we pick a name for the piece of state and a name for the function for updating the piece of state, and we give the use state hook an initial value for that piece of state to have when the component first loads in. So let's go to my dumb little games project and see how we could add some state into there. So in this games project, we have a little just list of dumb old games. So we want to think about what's a little piece of state that I could put in here that's a simple piece of state, like a string, a number, or a Boolean that will allow us to play around with setting state and things like that. I'm thinking I could make a piece of state for filtering the list of games. So maybe a little piece of state that says called game filter. And that piece of state could be fun games, deck building games, or all games, something like that, that would filter based on the category of the games. Let's make that piece of state. Now, to make a piece of state, we go into the component and up before the return. In our little function here, our app function is where we're going to put this piece of state. We have the return where we are returning a div with all the games inside. Up above that, typically at the very top of the component function, we are going to put a piece of state line. To make a piece of state, you always start with const, and then we put square brackets, not curly brackets, square brackets. Inside of those square brackets, we put two names that we get to pick. We could put apple and banana, but your coworkers would not like you. So we're going to make friends and pick better names here. We're going to call it games category filter and set games category filter. Maybe we'll just call it category filter. That's a long friggin' name. Set category filter. Okay. And we then do an equal sign. So const in square brackets, 2 names, equal sign, and then a call to the use state hook, which you will need to import. I'm going to have it auto import for me. And then I'm going to do parentheses. And inside those parentheses, we give this piece of state an initial value. I'm going to have the initial value be all. That'll be my initial value. We might tweak that, but we'll work with that. So using that piece of state, then I'm going to filter my list of games and only show the games that match that category filter thing. So I'll just make a variable up here, const filtered games equals games list dot filter, and we can filter for games where the game dot category equals category filter. But we need to make the all thing work. So let's put this in like an if else situation so that we can say, if it's all, then just show all of them, else do the filtering. Let's do that. So we're going to change this to let filtered games. And then we'll break this out. Either if category filter equals all, then we will set filtered games to just the whole list of games. Else, we will set it to this situation here, like that. And now down here, we'll change this to filtered games. So what we hope is that we should be seeing all the games showing up right now because we've set the filter to all, and if it's all, it should show all the games, else it should filter based on the filter. Let's go look at it in the browser. All right, looking at this in the browser, we're seeing all of them. Awesome. Let's go back in and just to kind of manually test, let's go back in and change that all to like fun and see if we see only Scythe and Galaxy Trucker, which are the 2 that we put in the category fun. So coming back in here, we'll just say initial state is now, let me just check to make sure I put it with an uppercase F, fun. So now I'm going to do initial state is now fun. Save that, go back and look at that in the browser again. And now we can see we're only seeing Scythe and Galaxy Trucker. So it looks like that piece of state is working. It's hooked up to the filtering correctly. But now we need to actually hook it up to some kind of button so that the user can control how things are filtered. Probably I'm going to put 3 buttons, one that changes it to all, one that changes it to fun, and one that changes it to deck building. And then the user can click between them to change the filtering state. So we'll just throw it in right here. We're going to put a little div, and inside this div, we're going to put some buttons with a little bit of bootstrap on them because why not? btn dash primary, and this will say all, and then we'll put 2 more, one that says fun and one that says, I think it was deck space building. Let's do that, deck space building. Made the buttons, we need them to actually change the piece of state. So let's put an on click on these. On click equals, let's stick this on all of them. And for each of these, we want it to, when you click on this button, change the state to the string for each of these. So I am going to put a little baby arrow function in here so that we can hand on click a function and that function will just do one thing, change the piece of state. So we'll do set category filter. This is the function that we gave a name to right here that use state will give to us. And this function, if you pass it in a new value like all, it should set the piece of state to that new value. I'm going to grab this and stick it in the other 2. But in the second one, it'll do fun. And in the third one, it will do deck building. All right, well, we forgot the parentheses. Okay, I forgot the parentheses. All right. Okay, all fun, deck building. Those 3 buttons should be in. Maybe a little margin end on these so they're not fully shoved up against each other. And hopefully this will work. Let's try it out. Hey, coming into the browser, if I click all, we can see all of the games. If I click fun, we only see Scythe and Galaxy Trucker. If I click deck building, we only see Machikoro. Woohoo! We got a piece of state that is working. Is it fancy? No, it doesn't matter. It's a good little piece to practice and get more comfortable with state. Woohoo! So exciting. Wow, prettiest thing anybody has ever seen ever. We did a piece of state. Now let's do a little bit of routing. I'm thinking that I'm going to want a page to show all the games, a page for one specific game, and maybe a page that has like a button that lets you get like a random board game. For those times when you don't know what to play, you can click the button and boom, now you have to play that game. Something like that. Again, don't need to overthink this. Just come up with a couple different pages that you could play around with to kind of get your hands in React Router. Let's look at how do we do that. So to get React Router working in your app, there's a couple pieces that we need. One, we need a browser router component just wrapping around like your whole thing. We tend to put that in like the index.js, and I'll show you what that looks like. Two, wherever in the page should switch, wherever in the page should change based on the route, we want to put a routes component, and inside that routes component, we put a route for each possible option of which one to show. So if the path is /shop, then the component to show in that area of the page is the shop page component, something like that. And then you just, make a component for each page is usually how we do it. You don't have to name your components with page on the end, like home page, shop page, product page. That's just a common thing to do to make it clear that this is kind of a top page level component for a particular page. Let's implement that into our little games app. I've decided that I want 3 pages. I'm going to make components for each one of those. And just to organize things a little bit, I'm going to make a folder. I'll just call it components. And I'm going to move all but like my app stuff to here. So I'm going to put it in there. And then this is where we'll make our other components. Let's make one called homepage.js. Why not? Let's make one called gamepage.js. And let's make one called randompage.js. That's what I'm naming them. I'm just going to fill in really quick some empty components into each one. All right, I've got 3 page components in there. Oh, I do need to fix my import because I moved that game card component. I now have to fix the import that's trying to find game card in just the source folder, but now it's in the components folders. So scrolling up here. Oh, it looks like it did fix it. Just needs to be saved. There we go. Awesome. Now I've made my components. We need to hook up our React Router situation. One thing we have to make sure we do before we kind of do any React Router stuff is install React Router. So I'm going to open up a new terminal in here and do npm install React Router DOM. This is the one for web React apps. It's going to install that situation, and then we can start to use it. So going into our index.js, we are going to put a browser router, which it should auto import that from React Router DOM for me, around our app component. This just makes sure that anywhere inside of our app, we can access React Router-y stuff, and we can do links or routes or all that kind of good stuff. So got that in my index.js, that's set up. Coming back to my app.js, I can now pick what area of the page do I want it to switch out. What area of the page do I want to change based on what the path is in the URL bar at the top. And I'm thinking it's this area. I don't want to always show the games. I only want to show them on the home page. So I'm actually going to take this and bring it over to the home page in here. Now we're going to have a problem because filtered games only exists in app.js. Now, how do we get something from a higher up component, app.js, down to a lower down component, homepage. If I am going to use homepage right here in my app component, how can I tell homepage what filtered games is? I need to pass it down through props. I've got to put a prop on homepage and accept that prop over here in the homepage component. So I can start from either side. Either I can start putting it in here or putting it right here. Regardless, I need to pick a name for this prop. I am going to call this prop games list. I'm going to call this prop games list. Now that is the name of this variable right here. Doesn't matter. We can reuse names as long as they're in a different component. And games list is a prop in a different component. So it won't have a problem with the variable in this component. So I'll do games list equals, and then I do curly brackets because I'm going to do some JavaScript here, and I'm going to put games list. This right here is the name of this variable up here. So now this variable will be available down in the game card component. Now, you might be wondering, couldn't we just do export const games list and then import it over here in, over here in homepage? And yes, we could, but that's going to cause a problem for us because ultimately in this app, we want the list of games to be dynamic, right? We don't want it to just always be Scythe, Machikoro, and Galaxy Trucker. Those are the only options that you have for games for this app. Instead, we want the user to be able to input their games and categorize them and all that good stuff. So this games list is actually going to need to go in state. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in state. Let's make a piece of state down here. Const games list, set games list equals use state. And then we could have it start out as an empty array. That would probably be the most normal thing to do in a app, right? It starts out with nothing and then you can start to put some in. But I'm going to rename this variable to just like test games in all caps, because that's often how we indicate that something's just like a constant variable. Test games in all caps, and I'm going to have this piece of state start out as that array of test games. And then later on, we could strip that out and have it start out as just an empty array. But this allows me to have data already preloaded in so that it's easier to test things. So now it's in state, and no longer can I just export this, because if I export this array, it won't be updated if the user ever updates that list of games. We don't want the homepage to always display these test games. We want the homepage to display whatever games happen to be in the list of games right now. So we're going to use this piece of state, and we called this piece of state games list, so all of this should still work. Now it's just working off of the piece of state, and now we are giving that piece of state down to the homepage. So the important thing to remember is that we can only export and import things that are not state. Like we can export and import an array of stuff that always stays the same, but if we want that array to be in state, something that can change and React will react to its changes and re-render and show those changes, then we can't export and import it in order to get it into another component. We instead need to pass it down through props. That way, that component will be re-rendered if that ever changes, because if games list ever changes, the app component will re-render, pass a new prop down to homepage, and homepage will re-render with that new prop and show the new list of games. So we've got our games list passing down right here. What do we got here? We do need to accept that prop over here. We could do props right here and then change this filtered games to be props.gameslist. But we probably actually want to bring down our filtering code into the homepage component and not have it always show up in the app component. So let's bring all this stuff with us. This stuff was going to get left all alone in there, and that's silly. Let's bring it down here, drop it in down here, meaning we also need to bring this stuff down as well. We'll bring this if else stuff down in here, and we will bring this piece of state down in here. Now That's not a whole app thing. That's just a homepage thing. Only the homepage cares how we have filtered our games because only the homepage shows all the games in a filtered way. All right now, so go away game card, nobody cares. All right, so now our app component has one piece of state, the list of games, and if we want here, we could grab this and put it in a different file just to get it kind of visually out of our way. This is just our array of test games. So I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna put it in a different file. We'll just call it testgames.js. And we'll export it. Again, we can export and import things that are constant, that never change, that are not in state. So export const test games. Oops, I have to spell export correctly. And then over in app.js, I can import it. I'll just do an auto import. Games, come on. Game, nope, doesn't want to. Never mind. We'll not do an auto import. I will import it manually. We called it test games. Rum./test games. Should hopefully work. All right, so we have a static array of test games that we are importing into the app.js. The app.js says, okay, I'm going to use that for my initial state for this piece of state, my initial value for this piece of state, but it might change down the road. So I'm going to tell homepage, here is that current piece of state, whatever it is. Maybe it's still that initial state, or maybe it's been changed since then. And then homepage can, based on that, do some filtering and show the games that match the filter. That's kind of the flow we got going on here. All right, go away test games, go away game card. We don't care about you. That is our homepage. Let's look at it in the browser and see if it's still working. Whoopsie daisy, we got a bug. Does anyone remember how to fix this bug? We ran into it last time because I do this a lot. How do we fix blink is not defined when what is not defined is like a component that we're trying to use? The answer is we've got to import it. So coming back into our VS Code, we just need to add an import, or we can see if we can trigger the auto import. Come on, nope, doesn't want auto import. All right, import homepage from /components/homepage. There we go, that should work. And if we go and look at it back in the browser, and now we're getting more. Okay. Well, we got more things to import. So going back in, this is how software is made, y'all. This is how software is made. All right, so we've got some imports to fix. I always do this. Okay, we've got to import game card. Let's see if it'll auto import. No, I'll just do it myself then. Import game card from /game card. And those are our imports. And then last bit we need is to get this games list bit working. We could do props.gameslist right here. But this week we learned about destructuring props. So rather than getting a whole props object and accessing properties on it, we can instead destructure that, pull out games list, and now we can just do games list in all these spots. And down here, we don't even want props.gameslist, we want filtered games so that our filtering still works. Maybe that should make it happy now. We will see. Let's go look at it in the browser. Yay, that's looking pretty good. So we do all fun deck building. That is working. Awesome. We've got the homepage working. Let's make the other two pages. Okay. In our random page, we want it to just grab one at random from the list of games and display that one. We'll just have it like every time it renders, just display one randomly. Why not? It's fine. Random page is going to need access to that list of games. How do we get from app.js? I'm just going to throw random page down here. They're going to all be in the same spot for now. We'll get to the routing bit in just a second, but we got to kind of hook up the other bits. So how do we get random page to know what games there are? We have to pass it down through props again. If you want, see if you could pause the video right now and try to predict what are we going to do to make sure that random page gets that prop, and then can use it just like homepage did. All right, here's what we're gonna do. Just like we did on homepage, we're just gonna copy this over. Random page can also have a prop called games list. They can have props named the same thing. And just like we did over here on homepage, we can destructure out games list. And now random page has access to the games list. We're gonna keep it simple here. We'll do const random game equals, what is it? You can do like a little, there's like a little trick, and let's see if I remember it. Math.floor, math.random times games list.length. Oop, that is not a times, that is an and. Times games list.length. I want to say this will get us a random game. I don't know, we'll see. Random game. And then all we're gonna do in here is say like, I don't know, H4, H5 apparently. You should play ... And then we'll do it like H2. And we'll put the random games name. Okay. All right. So let's put a little. Isn't there like display 1 or something? I think that's the thing. We'll see. All right. So this is our random page. Let's make sure that we've imported it over here. Doesn't want to do the auto import. I'll just make a copy of this and change this to random page component / random page. All right, now let's go look at it in the browser and see if the random page is working. Now we can see the homepage content and the random page content at the same time, and that's not what we want. We want to be able to switch between them as the user clicks on different links and things. So we've got to tell React Router, hey, in this part of the page, depending on the path, I either want to show the home page or the random page. And we need to make some links that the user can click that will change the path up in the URL, which will then tell React Router, hey, path changed, what should we show? And then React Router will show the correct one based on that path. So 2 pieces, the links bit of it and the tell React Router what to show based on what link was clicked bit of it. Let's go to the code. We don't want both the home page and the random page to be showing at the same time. So we make a routes component right here. And inside that routes component, we put a route for each potential page that we want to show. So we'll have 2 routes components, 2 routes components for the home page and the random page. We'll have this one be for the path / which just means nothing. So localhost :3000, nothing. There could be a /, there could not. And then we'll say the element equals, and we put curly brackets because we're going to do some JavaScript in here. But the JavaScript that we're going to do is this JSX. So we're going to grab this, drop it straight in there. And now this can look a little confusing. We have 2 end slashes. This one is ending out the home page. So right here, we're ending out the home page component. And then right here, we're ending out the route component. We need both of those. If you forget one, which I've definitely done, you'll get a bunch of red. So make sure you have both of those. And then the second one will make the path be /random maybe. We can pick whatever we want. And we'll have the element equal this guy, random page. All right. Now we've said that, hey, when the app component loads in, show a div, inside of that show an H1, and then based on whatever the path is up at the top of the URL, either show the home page or the random page. Let's see if that is working. Let's save this. Oh, we do need to import routes from React Router DOM, and I'll import route from React Router DOM. All right, now let's go see if it's working in the browser. All right, this looks good. And then if we do /random, sweet, we are seeing the random page. And if we change it back to nothing, we see the home page. Awesome. But the user doesn't want to be going up here and typing things in and trying to guess what our paths are. Instead, we want to make some links so that the user can switch between where they want to go. So switching back to the VS Code, let's make some links. We'll just put them in right up here for now. To create links in React Router, we do link from React Router DOM, and then instead of href, we do to. This way, rather than trying to navigate using just the normal links, we can have this go through React Router and navigate using React Router. So we'll do link to equals, and we'll just do slash, and we'll say home, and then we'll make another one, link to equals slash random. You have to spell it right, and we'll do random. So the only important thing is that these match each other. This one says slash random, so this one says slash random. We need to make sure those match so that when the user clicks on these, it will put slash random up at the top, and then it'll re-render, and it will then render this one because we're now at slash random. Hopefully that's what it will do. Let's see what it does. Going and looking at it in the browser, if we click on random, it is on the random page. It is on the random page. We click on home, we're on the home page, and we can now switch back and forth between these two pages. Is it pretty? No. But the point is we got to mess around with some React Router stuff, and that is awesome. We have now got a little bit of routing, and we can make it slightly prettier. We can, put a little styling on here. Class name equals, what is it? btn-link, margin in 3? I don't know. We'll see if this does the styling that we want. -3. We don't need the margin in 3 on this one. Go back and look at that in the browser, and it's fine. So we can click back and forth between our beautiful links. And we've got our original goal. We've hit that where we have some routing. We have at least 2 pages and we can switch between them. And we've got a piece of state that you can change that changes something about how things are rendering, showing up here in the page. So we have met our original goal just like last week. Get something like that working your portfolio project. That is awesome. But if you'd like to see how to take it a little bit farther, let's talk about some extra bits. We've got 3 extra bits. One, making a page using URL parameters. So we're going to make a page for one specific board game that uses a URL parameter to know the ID of the specific board game that you want to see, and then goes and shows that board game that it gets from that ID. So making a kind of like a detail page for one specific board game using URL parameters. So we'll look at that. Then 2, hooking up our links to not just be ugly little links right here, but instead a React Bootstrap navbar. Takes a little bit to hook up React Router with React Bootstrap, not too crazy, but we'll look at how we can do that. So those are our 2 little extra bits, and we will also, of course, add and commit to get our changes up onto our GitHub. Let's get started first with making the detail page. Coming back into our VS Code here, this is going to be our detail page. So first, I'm just going to make a route for it. Route path equals, and this will be like /games/ and then right here I'm going to indicate that this is kind of a placeholder for whatever the user types in. We put what's called a URL parameter. To indicate a URL parameter, you put a colon and then the name of the URL parameter. So I'll call this one game ID, because that's what's going to go there. And then we'll do element equals, and we'll do that game page. Did the auto import on that. I need the second little end out of the route component. And then I am going to need this games list over in the game page, because we're going to need it in order to get the game for the particular ID. So I'm just going to drop that in there. So now we've said, hey, if the route is /game/something, show the game page component. That's what we're saying right here. Now, let's go over to the game page component. We need to get out this games list prop, and we're going to need to access that URL parameter. So let's do games list. We've got the whole list. Just for funsies, we're going to imagine that the game ID URL parameter is just always 2. We're just going to pretend this for now. So we're pretending for now What we would want to do then is go grab the game with that ID. So we could do games list dot find, and I'll just use G since we already used game over here. We don't want anything to get confusing. So we'll do G and G.id equals game ID. So this is 2. We want to go find the game with that game ID 2, and then we want to display it in here. So we'll do, I don't know, like an H3. I'm just picking random H's. Game.name, and then maybe in a little paragraph underneath, we'll do, what is it, game.category. I believe one of the pieces of information about games, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, we'll worry about rating later. All right, so we've got the game name and the game category. Sure, let's throw in rating. Why not? Game.rating. They're all null for now, but we'll get that in the page. So we're showing all the information about that particular game. Let's see if that is working. Going over to the browser, let's do /game/something. Doesn't matter what we put there right now because we're not even accessing that URL parameter yet. And we can see we are getting Galaxy Trucker, which is that number 2 one. That's looking awesome. But we don't want it to always be Galaxy Trucker. We don't want it to always be 2. We want to get this dynamically from the URL parameter. Let's talk a little bit about how URL parameters work. A URL parameter is some part of the URL that's dynamic, that can be different things, just like a parameter to a function can have different values be put in it. We can put different things in our URL parameter. For example, in this URL, app.com/album/something/song/something, there's 2 spots that can be dynamic. In this case, the first one is set to pop, the second one is set to 4. You can see that in our route path, we've called the first URL parameter genre and the second URL parameter song ID. Those URL parameters will be bundled up into an object. Now, important thing to remember is that the number 4 will actually be the string 4. So if you need it as a number, you'll need to parse that into a number. But we will get this object, and if we call the use params hook, it will give us that object. And then for convenience, we can destructure out those 2 properties, genre and song ID, from that parameters object that we get from calling use params. Let's do that, but to get our game ID URL parameter. So coming back in here, let's change this right here to instead be use params, which we will get from a React router DOM. And we don't want to put the whole parameters object in here, params object in here. We instead want to destructure out one property called game ID. We know it will be called game ID because over here we named it game ID. So this right here should match what it says right here. But we have to remember that game ID will be a string, so if we want it to be a number, we need to parse that into a number. Let's just do, we could put the parse int right here, or we could make this a let so that it is changeable and say, hey, game ID, love what you got there, but I'd actually like to parse you into a number and then save you back into game ID. So now hopefully that variable should be updated with a number. And if we go look at this in the browser, hopefully it works. Let's go see. So we are getting an error right now, but that's just because it says something up here. We don't want it to say that. We need like an actual ID of one of the games. I believe a 1 should do it. Okay, so that looks good. And if I put in 2, we get Galaxy Trucker, woohoo! And then assumedly if I put in 0, we get Scythe. Awesome, so that is working. But we do still have that error. If we put in something that is not the ID of a game, like 34, we are going to get that error because it tries to get a game that matches that ID. And if it doesn't find one, then game is undefined, meaning when it tries to do game.name, it's trying to do undefined.name, and it doesn't work. We can fix that by putting in a little check here, a little bit of conditional rendering. So we can say, if there's not a game, then we want to show some kind of error message instead of showing this div down here. So we could do return h2 game not found. And now if we save that and go back, we can see we get game not found. So if we put in a good one, we will get that game. But if we put in anything that's not a good ID, we get game not found. So we're not getting that error anymore, and it'll instead tell you, hey, something went wrong. Beautiful. Our detail game page is working. We used a URL parameter. You can use a URL parameter any way you want, not just to like be the ID of one particular game, whatever you want to see. You could use the a URL param to say which category. So we could have a page that shows all of them of a particular category, and you could store that up there instead of doing a little filtering thing here. There's lots of options for what you can use URL params for. This is just one example. Go try out doing your own things and see what you can make with it. Last thing we're gonna do is just clean up this sort of navbar area that just says home and random. Also, we need a link that will take us to that game/whatever page. So we're gonna clean up this navbar area, and we're gonna set it up so that when we're looking at the games, we can click a link that takes us to that game detail page. Okay, first we'll do the link. Let's just go to the home page, and we're showing all the games in a game card. So if we go to game card down here, maybe just at the bottom here, we can just put in a little link. So link, and then we use the to attribute. And we want this to go to /games/ and then some ID, not to, it would be like the particular ID. Just put details right there. So we need to put this game's ID. We need to put like game.id right here. So we can just build this with the plus. You could also use a template literal. We just kind of need to build up a little string here that will allow us to say that, hey, this should go to, this should go to /game/ and then the game ID on the end to kind of build that string and then give it as the to path. So we'll save that. We'll check that in just a second. But we also want to, over in app.js, we want to take out these links and instead put in like a navbar in here. Now I am using the library React Bootstrap. That's the one that I have installed. You may be using React Strap or a different UI library. I'm using React Bootstrap, so I'm going to go look at the documentation for React Bootstrap. So I'll do React Bootstrap and go pull up that documentation, go to components, find navbars. Again, you would need to use the documentation for whatever library you have installed to do your UI stuff. Or you could do it with built-in CSS as well. So I'm just going to find a good one that seems like a good little example right here. This guy seems good. I'm going to grab this first one, copy that, and coming back to my code, paste that into my app.js. So right here. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we've got that pasted in there. We've got to change these so that instead of being home and features, it's home and random. And here's the thing. We don't want to do an A tag. And nav.link by default does an A tag, which is a problem for us. An A tag is going to function like a normal link, and we want it to function as a React router link. So what we can do is we can tell nav.link, hey, don't use an A tag, instead let me specify. If we go look at that documentation and scroll down or scroll over to navs and look up nav link, we can see that right here it says you can do an as prop, and this as prop can be the type of element that you want for this component. You can see by default it's an A tag, but you can specify what you want. So I'm going to use this as prop right here from the React Bootstrap documentation. Again, if you're using a different library, you'll need to look at that library's documentation to see how to customize it. But coming back in here, we can say right here, hey, I would like you to be a React router link as equal to link because that's what we have imported right here from React router DOM. So we have that link in there. We don't need this anymore, and we can have it instead of saying Navbar, it can say my board games. We can make this one a I believe Navbar brand takes an as well. So we can get rid of that. And now we have a Navbar here. But before we go look at it, we've got to make sure we have all our imports in here. I always forget these. I'll just get the auto import to pull in all of these. Nav, there we go. That should pull everything there. And just make sure we've got link from right there. All right, awesome. Oh, we need this import over here. Let's get that one. Okay, all right. Now let's go look at it in the browser. Okay, refreshing this. All right, this is looking good. We've got my board games. If we click home, if we click random, we can go back and forth between the two of these. If we click details down here, it takes us to the Scythe page, the Machikoro page, and the Galaxy Trucker page. You can see it's filling in that game/2 or whatever to take us to the right page. That's awesome. I don't love that this is kind of shoved over to the side, while this one's more centered. So I'm going to fix that really quick. We'll just put app.js. We'll just put a container around this routes area, just to kind of set it off, just like we did to this Navbar area. Now they'll kind of match each other better. And just so that the container isn't sort of running up against the top, I'll do a class name of margin top 4, and that is looking much nicer. Looking, nice enough, relatively nice. And all of this is working. So awesome. We've got ourselves a well-working little app. We used routing, including a route that uses a URL param, and we've got some state in here handling this filtering. So play around with a couple different things. Last thing to do is just commit it. We can do git add dot git commit -m, and we can say that we added pages and filtering of games and a navbar. And then we just do git push, and now that should be up on the repository. Hopefully this was helpful. Now it's your turn. Go out there, try some stuff, and make a big ol' mess.